This is Carol Meredith, the Executive Director of the ARC of Arapahoe and Douglas. And today we're doing a video workshop on the Supported Living Services Waiver. So as always, I have to do some sort of introductory stuff. This presentation is an introductory presentation in understanding the Supported Living Services Waiver in Colorado. We've done our very best to ensure the accuracy of the information you're about to hear, but it is as of July 2016, so keep that in mind. The ARC of Arapahoe and Douglas is providing this video as a public service to families. You need to decide what's right for you. This is for informational purposes only. I also want to let you know that the ARC of Arapahoe and Douglas is a private, nonprofit membership organization that exists to deliver services and supports that better the lives of people with developmental disabilities and their families. We are not a government agency. We provide advocacy, information, education, and support to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. Okay, so this Supported Living Services Medicaid waiver, it's also known as SLS, and it's a program that is provided to provided to give supports to people living in their home and their community. Okay. So let's get started. The criteria for SLS, or Supported Living Services. In order to be enrolled in SLS, you must be 18 years of age or older, be able to live independently with limited supports, or if you need a lot of supports or high-level supports, you have family or natural supports that are able to cover the rest of the services that you need. You have to be currently residing in or at risk of being institutionalized in an intermediate care facility. Now that's kind of a crazy definition, but the waivers are all based on that level of care, which is an intermediate care facility for persons with IDD. If you qualify for services through a community center board in Colorado, you qualify for this waiver, okay? You have to have income less than 300% of the Social Security income allowance per month. So in 2016, you can't be making more than $2,199 a month, okay? So as always, here at the ARC, we try to start off with a person-centered approach. And so we want you to start off that way too when learning about this waiver, and think about who is your son or daughter? You know, what does your son or daughter want to accomplish? What services do they need to get there? Can they be left alone in the home? What will they do during the day? Can they do any of this without support, or do they need somebody to be with them all the time? Which services in this waiver will enhance and enrich their lives? Or will they enhance and enrich their lives? These are things that only you will be able to know and understand. And finally, we want you to know that currently, in Colorado, there is not a waiting list for the Supported Living Services waiver. Now, if your son or daughter cannot spend any time alone, who will supervise this person when services under the SLS waiver are not available to them? These are things you need to try to figure out. If your son or daughter has a hard time expressing themselves, think about what experiences that individual might want to have so that you could observe them in that particular situation or that particular experience and get to know whether they really, really enjoy doing this activity or whether this is not the activity that they should be involved in. We want you to think about environments. Are busy, noisy environments just wonderful and great? Is that someplace where your son or daughter really shines and likes to be? Or not? You know, would they prefer a quieter, more low-key kind of environment? Does your son or daughter thrive with predictable routines and schedules? Or do they like surprises and novelty? These are the kinds of things you want to think about. What about medical needs? Are there allergies? Are there skilled kinds of nursing tasks that need to be performed, like G-tubes or skilled transfers or oxygen or diabetes care? What about sensory issues? Think about noise, lighting, temperature, colors, all of those kinds of sensory issues. Mental health needs. Does your son or daughter have mental health needs or behavioral needs that could enhance their lives if they got services through those with behavioral services? How about just kind of who they are as a person? Do they have a really strong work ethic? Do they love to be busy all day, every day? Or are they kind of more relaxed and the kind of person that likes to kind of hang out and watch what other people are doing all day long? Does your son or daughter like to help people or animals? Or do they prefer to not engage a lot with other people? These are questions only you can answer. And you may not have all the answers to all of these questions because you may not have seen your son or daughter in particular environments or doing particular activities. But we all know likes and dislikes, or what I like to think of as goes and stops, what makes people light up and their eyes are shining and they're attentive to what's happening because they really, really like doing a particular thing or watching a particular thing. And what are those stops for that individual? I mean, where do you see them kind of shut down? Or where do you see behaviors that are not necessarily behaviors you want to see in an individual? Those goes, those stops, they're individual to each and every one of us. We all have our strengths and capacities, and we all have our weaknesses and stuff that we just don't like to do or to be a part of. So think about your son or daughter from that perspective. Okay, so now we get down to kind of the nitty-gritty of the supported living services waiver. It has a certain list of services and supports that are available under the waiver. One is assistive technology. So if your son or daughter uses assistive technology to communicate, or maybe to get around, or any of those kinds of things, maybe they have a button or a switch that they use for a variety of activities, to turn on lights or to turn on a particular machine or whatever. Assistive technology is a covered benefit under the waiver. Behavioral services, we talked about that a little bit already, but behavioral services are usually provided by someone who is a certified behavior analyst who can come in and kind of observe a person's behaviors and develop a plan to extinguish the problematic behaviors by replacing those problematic behaviors with more functional community-based behaviors. Your son or daughter may or may not need behavioral services. Specialized medical equipment and supplies. This is a service that can cover things like wipes and chucks and tubing and a variety of different medical supplies that are not necessarily covered under the Medicaid state plan. Day habilitation services. I know, that sounds like a crazy thing, doesn't it? But basically what it is, you probably heard of it before, it's called day program. It's something that happens during the day. It's an activity-based program usually. It can either be within a facility or a particular building where people go and they hang out and they do arts and crafts and cooking, and maybe they'll do some laundry or whatever. And it could also be what they call supported community connections, where the person goes out into the community with a support staff person or more than one support staff person in a group, and go to various activities. They might go to the library or the park or a free concert or to the mall. They may go shopping, a variety of different activities out and about in the community. Dental services. Dental services are now covered by the state Medicaid plan up to a certain amount, but anything over and above that cap in the Medicaid state plan can be covered by the waiver. So if your son or daughter has a lot of dental needs, that's something to consider. Home and vehicle modifications. This is capitated over the life of the waiver, so over a 5-year period, you might be able to make some specific home modifications or vehicle modifications. These are typically things like a lift for a wheelchair van or a roll-in shower or widening doorways or grab bars so that people are safer within the home. But those kinds of supports can be covered under the waiver. Homemaker. This is an easy one. It's just like what it sounds. It's somebody to come in and keep the home together. So that's kind of like cooking and cleaning and laundry and dusting and those kinds of things. Mentorship. This is an interesting service, and a lot of people try to access it because it's got kind of a high rate attached to it. But it's really, its main purpose is to support an individual to participate in their community. So a mentor might be able to help an individual serve on a board of directors for an organization in the community, or go to a rally for government services or community-based kinds of things. A mentor can also help a person figure out how to hire and fire people. If they're interested in that, a mentor can help them choose providers. And this service is also available for adults with intellectual disabilities who have children of their own and need training and help to figure out how to be good parents. Non-medical transportation. It's a covered benefit under this waiver. In this waiver, it's typically used to provide transportation to and from a day program. All right, it's not used that much for there are limits on the amount of transportation, but it's important to know that's available. Personal response systems. I'm kind of old, so I always kind of think of the I'm fallen and I can't get up kind of personal response system that you wear around your neck, and if you fall, you can push it to have somebody come support you. But there's many, our technology has increased over the years, and there's many different kinds of choices around personal response systems that may or may not be something your son or daughter want to take advantage of under this waiver. Professional services. Now, all the therapies that you typically think of, like occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, those are covered under the Medicaid state plan. So those are not covered under this waiver. But services that are covered under this waiver are massage, movement therapy, which also happens to be music therapy, hippotherapy, which is horseback riding, therapeutic horseback riding, and some kinds of recreational fees at rec centers. Respite is covered under this waiver. Respite is where the primary caregiver takes a break, and the individual with disabilities is usually goes and lives someplace else with a trained family or a facilitator for a period of time to give the family member a break. It can also mean that a provider would come into the house or the place where the person lives and take care of them while the primary caregiver takes a break or goes to doctor's appointments or has to go take care of another family member, or whatever reason respite would be required. Vision services. There are some vision services that are covered under the state plan, Medicaid, but not much. This waiver provides, so if people need to get, glasses or contacts or whatever, they can get that paid for through this waiver. Employment. This is called supported employment. So this is supporting an individual in a job. There's pre-vocational and ongoing supports on the job site. So if you're interested, if you think your son or daughter really would be interested in getting a job and having a job and being at a job, but you're worried that they just need somebody to help them do that, either every once in a while or like all day, every day, supported employment can be a service provided under this waiver. Okay, so we've kind of talked about what SLS is. We've asked you a lot of questions to think about who your son or daughter is, and then we've given you a list of services that you could access under the SLS waiver. So hopefully you're thinking about who your son or daughter is and what your particular family situation is and what kind of services and supports that are available under the waiver that would really enhance their quality of life. Okay? Now, we're going to talk a little bit about funding. So, once your son or daughter is offered a resource under the SLS waiver, they will need to go through an assessment called the Supports Intensity Scale. And you may have heard other families talk about it as the SIS, but it is the Supports Intensity Scale. This is an evidence-based norm reference tool, and it was developed by AAIDD, which is a national organization for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And the tool itself is meant to measure how much support and services a person with IDD needs to live a typical life in the community. Colorado has chosen to use this tool to determine rates for the services that are provided under SLS, as well as the top budget amount, which we call the SPAL, which stands for Service Plan Authorization Limit. Okay? So when you're thinking about your budget, you have to think about your SPAL, and that's going to be based on your SIS score, 1 through 6, and that'll give you a number, an actual amount of money that you'll be able to access to spend on that list of services that I just talked to you about, okay? So each one of those services has a different rate attached to it. And I have given you a link in the PowerPoint of what those rates look like. So you can actually do the math. Once you go through your supports and intensity scale, or your SIS assessment, the person who did it, they'll call your case manager and they'll call you and they'll tell you you came out at a SIS level 2 or 3 or 6 or whatever. Then you can go to this rate schedule and you can see exactly how much a person can be paid for providing that particular service. You can do the math and you can figure out how many hours a day or hours a week or hours a month or hours a year of that particular service you can fit in your budget. Okay? So, the other thing we want to make sure that you think about is that the SLS waiver was never meant to cover everything that a person needed 24 hours a day. It does not cover housing, right? You did not see housing listed there as a service. It does not cover that. The government assumes that the payment from Social Security income will be able to cover food, clothing, and shelter, which is about $700 and some a month, right? It's kind of hard to cover your own apartment as well as all of the other things that are involved in having your own place. So that is not covered under this waiver. But the Medicaid state plan, which everybody would have access to if they have access to the supported living services waiver, it's like a health insurance plan. It really is. And it's a very robust health insurance plan, because one of the other things that it covers, besides going to the doctor, going to the hospital, going to the specialist, all those kinds of regular things, it covers something called home health. And under home health, you can get RNs, CNAs, those kinds of people who provide skilled medical care. And that can help supplement your SLS budget quite a bit. So don't forget about home health if that would apply to your son or daughter, because they've skilled medical care needs. And that's, it's skilled medical care. So you're talking G-tubes, you're talking oxygen, you're talking usually people with wheelchairs who can't stand and pivot, who need a skilled transfer to move from the bed to the chair, who have skilled bathing needs, those kinds of things, okay? But don't forget about that resource. Okay, so you're eligible for SLS, you've thought about who your son or daughter is and what they need and what their dreams are and who they want to, how you could enhance their life with the waiver. You've looked at the services, you've figured out your budget. Now you need to choose a provider agency. And there is a link, again, in the attached PowerPoint to all the provider agencies that are approved by the state of Colorado to provide services in the intellectual and developmental disabilities waivers, okay? So you go to that link and you'll see a chart, and I know it looks really overwhelming at first, but you're going to go through it, and first of all you're going to see at the top what services this agency provides. So you already kind of know what kind of services you want, so you'll want to go down that column to see if this particular agency provides those services or not. If they do, then you want to see, are they in Denver or are they in Grand Junction, right? Because if you live in Littleton, more than likely, some provider agencies are statewide, but more than likely, an agency that just serves the Grand Junction area is not going to be able to provide services to your son or daughter in Littleton. Okay, so take a look at their address. So first of all, do they provide the service that you think? Then are they located in a place that's fairly close to where you live? And then I fully recommend that you get on their website if they have it available If the website isn't listed in the chart, you might Google them and see what other people are saying about this provider agency. And then think about those questions that we talked about, right? Would this agency, who they are, would they be a good match for who your son or daughter is, okay? Then you also want to make sure that they're able to provide services to your child. So they might be a good match, but it could be that your son or daughter uses a wheelchair and they don't have any wheelchair accessible transportation, right? Or maybe even their building isn't wheelchair accessible, okay? So think that through carefully. You want to kind of hone in on a place where you think could provide good services to your son or daughter. You want to think about transportation. There's a variety of resources out there for your sons or daughters to go to different day programs. You, of course, can take them yourself in your car or whatever. They could ride the bus. We have a transportation training workshop that we do annually here where we've been really excited to see that a lot of people who didn't think they could ride the bus, once they learned how to ride the bus, really could ride the bus. Think about that. Access-a-Ride might be available to your son or daughter, and there's other transportation companies that might be able to provide transportation. So that's basically it. That is the Supported Living Services Waiver. As always, if you have any questions, concerns, if you need more information, please call us or email us. Check us out at our website. You're on it right now if you're viewing this video. And contact us by email or by phone, and we're happy to answer all of your questions. Thanks a lot.